Today what I will do is you have the installation of Linux. So I'll just show you the video for installation of Linux. Okay. Wait.
Welcome to the video tutorial on selecting a Linux distribution and types of installation. Now that we know what Linux is, it is time we learn how we should install it on the computer and choose which distribution we should use. Let us start by understanding what a Linux distribution is. Well, now as you know that Linux is an open source free-to-use kernel, it is used by programmers, organizations, profit and non-profit companies around the world in order to create operating systems to suit their individual requirements. These versions, types, kinds of Linux operating systems are called distributions or distros. So how many distributions are out there? There are hundreds of Linux operating systems or distributions available these days. Many of them are designed with a specific purpose in mind. For example, to run a web server or to run network switches like routers or modems. The latest example of one of the most popular smartphone-based Linux distribution is Android. So let us learn about some popular Linux distros. Starting with Arch Linux, this Linux distro is popular amongst developers. It is an independently developed system. It is designed for users who go for a do-it-yourself approach. The next is the CentOS. It is one of the most used Linux distribution for enterprises and web servers. It is a free enterprise class operating system and is based heavily on Red Hat Enterprise distro. The next is Gentoo. It is a source-based distribution, which means you need to configure the code on your system before you can install it. It is not for Linux beginners, but it sure is fun for experienced users. Linux Mint. It is one of the most popular desktop distributions available out there. It launched in 2006 and is now considered to be the fourth most used operating system in the computing world. Next is Ubuntu. This is the third most popular desktop operating system after Microsoft Windows and Apple Mac OS. It is based on Debian Linux distribution and it is known for its desktop environment. So which one is the best Linux distribution? Well, each Linux distribution is built for a specific purpose to meet the demands of its target users. Most of the distributions are available for free at their respective websites. You might want to try them one by one till you get to know which distribution you like the most. Each one of them offers its unique design, applications, and security. We will be using Ubuntu for our learning purpose as it's easy for a beginner to understand. Now let us look at the various methods we can use to install Linux. The first type of installation is from the USB stick. This is one of the easiest methods of installing Ubuntu or any other Linux distribution on your computer. So let us start with the USB stick installation. For this, you are going to need the Ubuntu ISO or OS files. You can download them by visiting ubuntu.com/download/desktop. Let's visit this page. As you can see here, there are two versions of Ubuntu available free for download. Let us go ahead and download Ubuntu 12.10. The second software that you are going to need is a program which will install the Ubuntu ISO files on the USB stick. So for this, you can install the universal USB installer available for free at pendrivelinux.com. So let us go ahead and download it. So once you have the Ubuntu ISO files and the universal USB installer downloaded on your computer, it's time to run the universal USB installer. The first step is about selecting a Linux distro. The drop-down menu here shows the list of different distributions and their versions. We will choose Ubuntu 12.10. Next, you need to click on Browse, and here we have the Ubuntu 12.10 ISO files on the desktop. So go ahead and click on it. Now you need to choose the USB flash drive. So let us go ahead and click on this drop-down menu here. It shows that we have a USB stick mounted on the drive I. So let's select it. Now if you want to format the USB flash drive before it installs Ubuntu, you can click on Format the drive. Then click on Create. You would get a pop-up message informing you that the universal USB installer will work on the following actions. Click on Yes. Then the universal USB installer program will start moving the Ubuntu ISO files to the USB stick. Once done, you have the USB stick ready with Ubuntu to install it on your system. So let us go ahead and click on Close. Now your USB stick is an installation media with Ubuntu on it. Now you can boot your computer through this USB stick and you would be able to run Ubuntu without installation. The second method of installation is by Live CD. This is another effective way of installing Linux on your system. For this, you again need to visit ubuntu.com/download/desktop in order to download the ISO files. Once you're done with the download and you have Ubuntu installation files on your computer, burn them to a CD and then you need to boot your computer through the optical drive and follow the instructions as they come. The next and the most popular method to install a Linux operating system is virtual installation. It offers you the freedom of running Linux on an existing operating system already installed on your computer. This means if you have Windows or Mac OS running, then you can just run Linux with a click of a button. Virtual machine software like Oracle VM can install Ubuntu in easy steps. Let us look at them. Again, you first need to download the Ubuntu ISO files on your computer. Then you need to download the installation files for Oracle VM VirtualBox. As we are running on Windows right now, we will go ahead and download these files. So let us download and install Oracle VM on the computer. Once done, you need to click on the VirtualBox icon on your desktop, and this is the screen that would open. Then you need to configure the virtual operating system by clicking on New, which will create a new virtual machine. You can have multiple OS installations in your virtual machine at the same time. Then click on Next. Type in a name for your virtual machine and then choose the operating system and the version that you would like to install. Click Next and define the memory size for the virtual machine. Right now, the memory allocated for the virtual machine is 512 MB. You can always increase the base memory size for the virtual machine. Then click on Next. Create a new hard disk. This does not create a new drive like C, D or E in your machine. Instead, it creates a VDI, which is a virtual disk image. This virtual disk will contain your OS installation. Click on Next and you will find that there are many options to create a virtual disk. Choose VDI, which is VirtualBox Disk Image. Select between dynamically allocated or fixed size virtual disk storage. A dynamically allocated virtual disk file will only use space on your physical hard disk, which is used by your VM installation, while fixed size will use the entire allocated space in your physical hard drive. Click on Next. Define the location for virtual disk file on your physical hard drive and the file size. The recommended file size is 10 GB. Click on Next. You are then shown a summary screen. Click on Create. And this is the virtual machine that we created. So let's go ahead and power the virtual machine. This will boot Ubuntu on VirtualBox. Now let's go ahead and install Ubuntu. If you want to download updates while installing, you can check this tick box. Let's click on Continue. So if you want to go ahead and install Ubuntu directly, you can choose this option here. It will not affect the hard drive, instead will only erase the virtual disk that you have created. Otherwise, if you want to work on the partitions, you can choose something else. Let's go ahead with Erase Disk and install Ubuntu right now and click on Continue. You can type in the city you live in here and then you need to click on Continue. Then choose the language that you would want to work with and click on Continue. Now this is an important step and it would define your rights on the Linux system. So put in your name here and then choose the computer name. We will leave it like this. Then you can put in a username of your choice and after that put in a password. Then you can choose any of these two options here and click on Continue. Now this would install Ubuntu on your system. Those who want to test your distribution before installing it on a computer and replacing the existing operating system would be surprised to know that you can easily run it from the USB stick or a CD in the trial mode. As you can see here, we have a Try Ubuntu option available. If we go with it, Ubuntu would start in the trial mode and you can easily check out the interface. This way, you can learn whether you like the distribution or not and can either install or move on to another one. You can even install Linux side by side with Windows or any other OS which is called dual booting. Let us quickly summarize what we learned today. An operating system based on the Linux kernel is called a distribution or distro. There are hundreds of distributions available, some of which are designed to accomplish a sole purpose like running servers, act as network switches, etc. Naming the best Linux distribution is difficult as they are made for different needs. Linux can be installed in your system via the below mentioned methods. The first one is the USB stick, the second one is the live CD, and the third one is virtual installation. Thank you for watching. I will see you in the next tutorial.
Hello guys, welcome to OS channel. My name is Aditya. In this video, we are going to take a look at some operating systems from the Linux family and different ways of installing these operating systems. So let us start with the Linux family tree. As you can see on the left hand side, I have the Linux family tree, and what I have done is I have grouped these operating systems into three families. The Debian family, which covers the major part of the chart, and then we have the second major footprint from the Red Hat family, which is followed by Slackware family on number 3. Now the reason for grouping these operating systems is that in Linux you will find a lot of variants. And if you come across one of them and you know to which family that variant belongs, then you will be very comfortable managing that OS if you have knowledge about that family. So let's visit some operating systems from the Debian family. Now Debian itself is one of the earliest Linux operating systems with over 43,000 software packages available for installation. Now this is one of the main reasons why people adopted Debian as their main OS. Inside the Debian family we have Knoppix. Now Knoppix was mainly designed to boot directly from a CD/DVD like medium. Has its own advantages but not that good for installing it as your primary OS. Next we move on to Ubuntu. Now Ubuntu has been very successful Linux operating system. It is the third most used desktop OS after Windows and Mac. The Linux community has started developing variants itself from Ubuntu. Such variants include Xubuntu, Mint, Peppermint OS, the Chromium OS, and even Kubuntu, which is the Google's take on Ubuntu. So those were a few Linux variants from the Debian family. Let's take a look at the Slackware family. Now, Slackware OS itself has been famous for its simplicity. By simplicity, it doesn't mean easy to use. It's like Slackware OS majorly focuses on command line usage rather than graphical interfaces. The SUSE Linux operating systems from the Slackware family have also gained a lot of attention in the Linux community. SUSE started its commercial version, also known as the SLES or SUSE Linux Enterprise Server, which mainly focuses on stability and business support. On the other hand, OpenSUSE focuses on providing user-friendly desktops and feature-rich server environments. Because of this, SUSE has recently become an aggressive competitor in the OS market. This brings us to the Red Hat family. Red Hat discontinued its Red Hat Linux OS in 2003 to start the commercial Red Hat Enterprise Linux. RHL crazily focuses on stability and best Linux support. This isn't free though, and RHL users have to pay for the RHL updates and other support services. This gave rise to CentOS, which is an operating system that attempts to provide similar enterprise class platform with free support. Now, CentOS is a community based enterprise operating system which is derived from the sources of RHL and it is closest to RHL in terms of functionality. On the other hand, there is also the Fedora project which is sponsored by Red Hat. Now, Fedora as an operating system focuses mainly on innovation and bleeding edge technology, and it is the operating system that is also used by the creator of Linux kernel. Those were a few operating systems from the Linux family. Let's take a quick look at the different installation methods now. Now, all the Linux OS vendors usually provide their operating systems for free in ISO formats. There can be a variety of ISOs available for a single OS, and this is where a lot of people get confused on which ISO they should download. For each Linux variant, the most common type of ISOs you will find are full ISO and minimal ISO. The full ISO usually contains a wide variety of packages that can be used to set up anything from a desktop to database and web servers, but most of these packages are not required by all users. This also makes the full ISO large in size, causing longer download and installation time. But if you are a beginner or you want to have access to all the packages, then you should always go with the full ISO. On the other hand, the minimal ISO only contains the packages that are required to install an extremely basic functioning operating system. This avoids installation of unwanted packages. Once the operating system is installed, users can install only the required packages according to their specific requirements from the package repositories. So once you download the ISO image you need, you will have to create an installation media. This can be done by burning the ISO onto a CD, DVD, USB drive, SD card, or even a hard drive. Once the installation media is ready, we can boot up the system from that media and initiate the installation. Another type of ISO that is provided by some OS vendors is the network install ISO. This ISO can initiate the installation, but it does not contain the packages for installing the operating system. So it will guide you through the selection of language, keyboard layout, time zone, etc. etc. and finally come at a screen where it will ask you for the location of the package repository. This is where you can provide the URL location of the package repository from the internet or your local network. That repository can serve packages using any of these common methods, which include HTTP, SMB, FTP, or NFS. Most vendors also provide a live ISO, which can be used to test the operating system before installing it. Now, there can be times when you do not have physical access to the machines to perform the entire installation. At such time, we can use the remote installation methods. One such method is installing via virtual network computing, also known as VNC. VNC allows us to perform graphical installations on remote machines over a network. These days, most network cards also support PXE boot. This feature can be combined with DHCP and TFTP to perform remote installations. In this method, once you start the system, the PXE enabled network card procures an IP address from the DHCP server on the network. It then locates the network bootstrap program and downloads it for execution. Once executed, this NBP loads the bootloader, which in turn initiates the installation process. We can also automate an entire Linux OS installation. While performing an installation, we are prompted for a lot of configuration options like time zone, keyboard layout, partitions, packages, etc. The answers to these questions can be placed in a file and provided to the installer during installation. ks.cfg file is one such file that is used by the Red Hat family. The Debian family uses the precede.cfg file, whereas autoinst.xml file is used by the SUSE family of Linux operating systems. Once these files are created, they can be used to perform repetitive installations of OS instances. The common methods known here are installing with Kickstart, installing using preceding, and installing with AutoYast. If OS installations are performed very often, then we can also set up provisioning servers, which are capable of performing complete unattended installations. Cobbler server is one such provisioning server that can be used for multiple network installations from a central point. Cobbler initially supported installation of only Red Hat based operating systems, but recently it has come up with support for Ubuntu as well. FAI or fully automated installation server is another such option for performing automated installations of Debian based operating systems from a central point. So guys, that was an overview on installation methods. In next few videos, I am going to show you how you can create your own CD, DVD or USB drive and perform a manual installation. Also, I'll do a few videos on how to perform automated installations. So if you have any questions, suggestions or any improvement points, as this was my first video, do let me know in the comments below and don't forget to subscribe. Thank you for watching. This is Aditya signing out.
Hello. Yeah, this was regarding the installation, some methods for Linux. Now, in your syllabus, you have overview of Unix Linux architectures. Am I audible properly now?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So this was related to installation. Now in your syllabus, you have overview of Unix, Linux architectures, file systems, and all, directory structure, and then some simple Linux commands also. So everything we will be doing in the next class. Okay. So today it was just related to installation of Linux. Now what I will be doing is I will be uploading these videos in the classroom. Okay. If I have 2 3 more also, I'll upload everything. You can go through it since you're not coming to college till now. Till, like we don't know the status. If you want to practice, you can go through these videos and try installing at your end. In college, we have Ubuntu. So next practicals, whatever we will be showing you, we will be working on Ubuntu. Okay. So I will stop over here. I'll take the attendance. Wait. Actually, I couldn't generate the meet report. Just take your attendance. Okay. Give your attendance. Roll number 1, 2, 3,
Yes, ma'am.
4,
Present, ma'am.
5,
Yes, ma'am.
6,